first book is one that I got in my book of the month. It's one that just feels very like the cover. Hold on, my hair's doing weird things. Hi everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with my September haul. Time to talk about the books that I picked up in the month of September. There are only 6 to talk about, so I'm doing pretty good. The last couple of months I've been trying to cut back on book buying, and I've said it before, but like I can't put myself on a book buying ban, because if I did, then I would buy twice as many as I would normally. So I just kind of am aware of what I'm doing and kind of conscious of it, and I think that's been really good. So I still have a few to show you guys. I'm very excited about some of the ones here, and it's just a real hodgepodge of stuff. So this shouldn't be too long of a video, so let's dive in. The first one is my book of the month pick for September, and it is just like super fall. It gives me the fall vibes based on the cover, and that is You Again, and this is by Kate Goldbeck. Doesn't that just scream autumn? So hopefully we'll get to this one. I'm thinking November is probably going to be the better month to get to it, but this has been marketed, or at least I've heard people talking about this is like When Harry Met Sally vibes. So we follow our main 2 characters, Ari and Josh, and so they meet one night and instantly hate each other. They cannot stand each other. There's nothing they have in common. Ari is a free-spirited, struggling comedian, it says, and then Josh is a born and bred New Yorker who has ambitions of taking the culinary world by storm. And it just so happens that they have one thing in common, and that happens to be that they are sleeping with the same woman. So years in the future, we kind of flash forward, they meet again, and they've both just had a breakup, and so they're just too sad to hate each other. So they kind of strike up this friendship, and it really has them getting to know each other way more, and then possibly turning into something more. So it definitely has that Harry Met Sally vibes that I didn't realize when I picked this out, but now that I have really had time to read what this book is about, that's absolutely what this feels like. So it's like enemies to friends to lovers is the vibe of this story. But doesn't that just look like autumnal? I mean, like, I'm sure that's the point. There's leaves all over the place, but it just looks so fun. So that's my book of the month. It's a contemporary romance. We shall see how it goes. So the next 2 books are both books that I received in, I believe it's my August, I guess, Fairy Loot. If I am correct, let me double check that I didn't just lie to you. Yes, okay. So this first one, so if you want to check out that video, I'll leave it linked above. I unboxed both of these. So here is your warning to skip ahead a little bit. But the first one is the book that we received in the YA box, and that is Bonesmith. This is by Nikki Palpretto. So this has an alternate cover. This is the one that it came with, but it has an alternate cover, so you'll be able to see it in the overlay. But this one has to do with like the dead. So we follow a bonesmith named Wren, and basically what a bonesmith is it severs a ghost from its earthly remains. And so she is training to be a Valkyrie, which is a ghost fighting warrior. And so she's very proud of this. She thinks this is going to be her way to get her like absent father's attention again, and just like bring pride to her house. There's like a bunch of different, like the house of this in this world, and so they're kind of like, for lack of a better word, maybe clans is a better word, but it's, you know, a bunch of different houses. But then something happens in her qualifying trial, and she is banished to defend the border wall, which is the last line of defense against the wasteland that's called the Breach, where the vicious dead roam unchecked. So she's there, she's like trying to figure out what she can do to kind of get back in the good graces, and it turns out that a prince is kidnapped, and she's like, awesome, I'm gonna go through the breach and I'm gonna figure out who he is and protect him and save him. And then to do so, she ends up having to team up with one of the kidnappers named Julian, who is from this, or was exiled from this house of iron, or the House of Iron is an entire exiled house. I'm not entirely sure, but they do not get along. They bicker the entire time, but they work together to save this prince. Why one of the kidnappers is working with her, I don't understand that, but it's very like ghosty. It's very like undead Halloween vibes. So I'm very interested in this one. I haven't read anything by this author, but she did write the Crown of Feathers trilogy, which is one that I have heard of. So we'll see how this goes, but that is the YA book. And then the adult book is this beautiful book, which is Forged by Blood, and this is by an author's name who I am almost certainly going to butcher, and that is Ibor Okosun, maybe. And this one is a book inspired by Nigerian mythology. So we follow our main character, Demi, and she has blood magic, but she's part of this group of people who have been basically like, there's been brutal genocides against, and so she's trying to hide from the king. Something happens, she loses her mother, betrayal of her life, a whole thing, and so she just kind of is vying time for revenge, and is presented with an opportunity to kidnap the prince. So I think she goes with her best friend to kidnap the prince, or she kidnaps the prince, and then she and her best friend and the prince go on this trek. I don't know, there's some journeying happening, and then it sounds like maybe she and the prince get along more than she thought they would, and there's just some other layers to it as well. But it says that it is a tale of rebellion, redemption, love, and lies, which is an epic fantasy that is steeped in Nigerian mythology, like I mentioned. So very interested about that. I love this super fun cover. It's really hard to even show you the title and everything because of all of the foiling, but it's purple, it's fun, it has beautiful sprayed edges. So that was the adult book. And then I ended up picking up a book that I wasn't sure if I was going to pick up or not, but I ended up doing it because I'm obsessed with this series. And that is Immortality, a love story by Dana Schwartz. This is the second in this duology. The first one was Anatomy, which I read last year. And this is a fun, it's perfect. It's like a gothic story about medical stuff and is very, I keep saying it's like Frankenstein-esque. It's really not, in the sense of like, there's no reanimation of dead bodies and things like that, but it is this woman studying human bodies, so it has that science element. So in the first book, we follow our main character, Hazel, who wants to be part of the Royal Edinburgh's Anatomist Society, but she can't because she is a woman. And so she ends up making this deal with the guy who is teaching the class to get you prepared to take the test to be inducted into the society. And so he agrees, you know what, yeah, sure, I will happily let you take the test, but you can't come to any of the classes. And so she ends up having to study on her own at time, and she ends up making a deal with this guy named Jack, who is a grave digger, grave robber person, who literally just steals bodies and sells them to like anatomist societies and doctors and teachers and things like that, so people can study the human body. And so he ends up digging up some bodies and selling them to Hazel so that she can study them. And then of course lots more goes down. There is this like plague that's going through, and so she's trying to figure out what's maybe causing that. Then of course there is a friendship between her and Jack, that kind of stuff. So it dives really deep into the medical science elements, but it does have that very gothic vibe to it. And this is just the second book, continues on from the first one, but it involves Hazel getting to know Princess Charlotte, who is the sickly granddaughter of King George III, and so she's ended up dragged into the court of King George III. And so there is some court intrigue, there is some royalty included in this book, which I'm very interested to see how that's going to go. But also there was a little bit there was kind of a cliffhanger. Not really. There was a thing that happened that you're kind of like, you can interpret going two different ways. So I'm interested to see how that's going to play in the second book. But I loved it, and it looks like so much fun, and hopefully I'm going to get to it in the month of October. I love the first one so much. I have really high hopes for the second one. The next one is a random murder mystery that my mother-in-law gave me because she read it and was like, this is good, here you go. So we'll see if I get around to this one. I'm thinking maybe sometime in November if I have time, but it's called Social Crimes, and it is by Jane Stanton Hitchcock, and I don't know if it's part of a series, but it follows our main character, Jo, who is part of New York's high society, and she's kind of like the grandest of the great dames. I'm not sure if it's set present day or if it's set in like the 60s or something. I'm thinking it's probably set now, but something happens and Joe's husband of 20 years dies under strange circumstances and leaves his entire fortune to a mysterious French countess. So Joe gets nothing, and she's like, this is suspicious. And so I'm sure someone thinks that she's probably the one who killed him. So I think she's trying to figure out who did it and what's going on. So murder mystery, high society, we shall see. And then the last book is one that I've already read, but I wanted to get the paperback copy of it, and it finally came out, and that is Kingdom of the Feared by Carrie Maniscalco. You guys know that I am obsessed with the Kingdom of the Wicked series. This is the final book, which I have read. I just wanted a physical copy to match my other two that were both in paperback, and it finally came out this year. There's also a new one in this series that came out that I really need to read. It follows, like, it's a different story, but it follows one of the other princes of hell. Let me tell you what the story is about if you don't know. So the book takes place in like an Italian-inspired village/countryside, and so it follows Amelia. And at the beginning of this book, her twin sister Vittoria is brutally murdered, but in a way that is very, very reminiscent to a lot of other murders that have been happening. So there's clearly a serial killer going on, but everyone who has been murdered is a witch. And Amelia and Vittoria have magical powers. So she's trying to figure out what's going on. So she ends up summoning the Prince of Hell, who is one of the 7 princes of hell. And his name is Wrath. So she ends up summoning Wrath. And he has his own reasons for wanting to figure out what's going on. And so it's the two of them as they team up together to figure out what went down. And that is just the first book. It spirals out of control and it goes crazy, honestly, from there. And this is the final book in the series. I loved it. I can't wait to sit down one day and tab and highlight the crap out of this book, because you guys know that I will do that. But it finally came out in paperback, so I have my own copy, and I was just very excited. I pre-ordered it so I could have the paperback. So I finally have a copy of it. And that's it. I don't have that many books this month. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned, or if you have picked up something recently that you were very excited about. I think my October haul is going to be a little bit bigger, just based on the book of the months that I'm getting, my fairy loots, just based on a few pre-orders that are coming out. I just have this vibe that I think it's going to be a little bit more. So we'll see, but I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you'd like to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got my social media and other fun bookish links down below, so don't forget to check all that out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!